The rejection email arrived on a Wednesday morning, and Rebecca Stone read it 3 times before accepting that the words were not going to rearrange themselves into something more favorable. She had not gotten the job at Sterling Pharmaceuticals, which meant her savings account would continue its tragic descent toward zero while her student loans multiplied like rabbits in the background. At 24, she had imagined her life would involve more success and less instant ramen, but the universe had other plans. She closed her laptop with more force than necessary and stared out the window of her cramped apartment. The coffee shop across the street was busy, as always, filled with people who presumably had better luck with employment. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Megan asking if she wanted to grab lunch. But Rebecca could not afford lunch anywhere that did not involve her own kitchen and whatever sad ingredients currently occupied her refrigerator. That afternoon, she updated her resume for the 100th time and started scrolling through job listings with the enthusiasm of someone preparing for a root canal. Marketing assistant, administrative coordinator, customer service representative. None of them sparked anything resembling excitement, but excitement was a luxury she could not afford. She needed money, and she needed it soon. The posting for an executive assistant position caught her eye only because of the salary range. It was significantly higher than anything else she had seen, which immediately made her suspicious. She clicked anyway, reading through the requirements with growing certainty that she was not qualified. 5 years of experience preferred. Advanced proficiency in multiple software systems. Ability to handle confidential information with discretion. The list went on, each bullet point a reminder that she was a recent college graduate with minimal work experience and a degree in communications that had so far communicated nothing except her poor decision-making skills. But the salary. That salary would change everything. Rebecca spent 2 hours crafting a cover letter that walked the fine line between confident and desperate. She emphasized her organizational skills, her ability to learn quickly, her willingness to work long hours. She did not mention that she had never been an executive assistant before, or that the most executive thing she had ever assisted was her college newspaper, which had operated out of a basement and smelled perpetually of mildew. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then immediately began second-guessing herself anyway. It was a waste of time. They would never call her. Someone with actual experience would get the job, someone who knew what they were doing and did not survive primarily on pasta and optimism. The call came 2 days later. Rebecca almost did not answer because she did not recognize the number, but unemployment had made her brave in strange ways. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Patricia from Montgomery Industries and asked if Rebecca would be available for an interview the following Monday. Montgomery Industries. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but Rebecca could not place it. She agreed to the interview with a professionalism she did not feel, wrote down the address, and thanked Patricia 3 times before hanging up. Then she frantically Googled Montgomery Industries and felt her stomach drop. The company was massive. They owned and operated luxury hotels across the country, each one a monument to elegance and sophistication that Rebecca had only seen in magazines. The CEO was Yates Montgomery, a 32-year-old who had inherited the company from his father and somehow managed to double its value within 5 years. The photos showed a man with dark hair, sharp features, and the kind of jaw that probably had its own publicist. He looked exactly like someone who would never hire Rebecca for anything. She spent the weekend preparing. She researched the company until she could recite their mission statement in her sleep. She practiced interview questions in front of her mirror, trying to sound competent and hireable. She bought a blazer from a thrift store that fit reasonably well and did not have any visible stains. Monday morning arrived with rain and traffic, both of which seemed designed specifically to test her resolve. She showed up to the Montgomery Industries headquarters 15 minutes early, damp and nervous, and tried not to gape at the lobby. Everything was glass and marble, and the kind of calculated minimalism that screamed money. The receptionist directed her to the 32nd floor, where Patricia met her with a warm smile and led her to a conference room. The interview was not what she expected. Patricia asked questions about her organizational style, how she handled stress, what she knew about the hospitality industry. Rebecca answered honestly, perhaps too honestly, admitting that she had limited experience but unlimited determination to learn. Patricia seemed to appreciate the candor. She explained that the position would involve managing Yates Montgomery's schedule, coordinating with department heads, handling correspondence, and essentially ensuring that his day ran smoothly. "Mr. Montgomery is demanding," Patricia said carefully. "He expects excellence, but he is fair. This is not an easy job, but it is an excellent opportunity for someone willing to work hard." Rebecca nodded, trying to project confidence she did not entirely possess. She wanted this job. She needed this job. The salary alone would solve most of her immediate problems, and the experience would open doors that were currently welded shut. At the end of the interview, Patricia said they would be in touch within a few days. Rebecca thanked her and left, feeling like she had done reasonably well but also knowing that reasonably well might not be good enough. The call came on Wednesday. They wanted to offer her the position. Rebecca accepted so quickly that Patricia laughed. They discussed start date, benefits, paperwork. Rebecca tried to focus on the details, but her brain was already calculating how many months of rent this would cover, how quickly she could pay down her credit cards, whether she could finally afford to buy vegetables that did not come frozen in a bag. Her first day was the following Monday. She arrived early again, this time without rain but with exponentially more anxiety. Patricia met her and spent the morning going over systems, protocols, expectations. The office that would be Rebecca's workspace was connected to Yates Montgomery's by a door that was currently closed. Patricia explained that he was in meetings all morning but would want to meet her after lunch. The morning passed in a blur of passwords and procedures. Rebecca took notes frantically, trying to absorb everything. The phone system alone seemed to require an advanced degree. By noon, her hand was cramping and her head was swimming, but she felt like she was starting to understand the basic framework of her job. Patricia left for her own lunch break, and Rebecca was alone in her office for the first time. She ate the sandwich she had brought from home and reviewed her notes, trying to commit everything to memory. The door to Yates Montgomery's office remained closed, though she could occasionally hear the low murmur of his voice. At 1:15, the door opened. Rebecca looked up and promptly forgot every single thing Patricia had taught her that morning. Yates Montgomery was taller than she expected, which was saying something because the photos had already suggested height. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been designed specifically for his frame, which it probably had. His dark hair was slightly disheveled in a way that looked intentional, and his eyes were an unusual shade of gray that she could see even from across the room. "You must be Rebecca," he said, and his voice matched the rest of him, deep and assured. She stood up too quickly and nearly knocked over her water bottle. "Yes. Hi, Mr. Montgomery, it's nice to meet you." He crossed the room and extended his hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive. "Yates is fine. Patricia speaks highly of you." That was surprising, considering Patricia had known her for approximately 4 hours total. "I am eager to learn." "Good. This job has a steep learning curve." He leaned against the edge of her desk with a casualness that somehow still looked professional. "Patricia said you were honest in your interview about your lack of experience." Rebecca felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I was. I did not want to misrepresent myself." "I appreciate that. I have worked with plenty of people who talked a good game and could not deliver. I would rather have someone honest who is willing to work hard." He studied her for a moment, and she resisted the urge to fidget under his gaze. "This is going to be challenging. My schedule changes constantly. I have high standards. Some people find it stressful." "I understand. Do you?" He did not sound skeptical, just curious. "I think so, and if I do not, I will figure it out." The words came out more confident than she felt, but she meant them. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of what might have been approval. "All right then. Let's see how this goes." He pushed off from her desk and returned to his office, leaving the door open this time. Rebecca sat back down and released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Her hands were shaking slightly. That was her boss. That was the person she would be working for, seeing every day, answering to directly. She was either going to rise to this occasion or crash spectacularly, and there was only one way to find out which. The first week was brutal. Rebecca's days started at 7 in the morning and often did not end until well past 6 in the evening. Yates's schedule was a complex beast that required constant management. Meetings ran over. Emergencies appeared from nowhere. Phone calls needed to be screened and prioritized. She made mistakes, some small and some less small. She double-booked him once, forgot to send an important document twice, and accidentally hung up on a board member who did not appreciate being accidentally hung up on. But she learned. She learned quickly, and she learned thoroughly, and more importantly, she did not make the same mistake twice. Yates noticed. He did not praise her effusively, but he nodded when she got something right, and he explained things when she got them wrong instead of just getting angry. She had expected him to be cold or dismissive, the way powerful men often were in movies, but he was neither. He was demanding, yes, but he was also fair, just like Patricia had said. On Friday afternoon of her second week, he stopped by her desk as he was leaving for the day. "You are doing well." Rebecca looked up from the email she was drafting, startled. "Thank you. I mean it. This is not an easy job, and you have adapted faster than I expected." He paused, and something in his expression softened slightly. "Have a good weekend. You have earned it." After he left, Rebecca sat at her desk for a few extra minutes, feeling absurdly pleased. It was just a compliment, just a small acknowledgement of her work, but it mattered. She mattered here in a way she had not mattered anywhere else yet. The weeks began to blur together in a rhythm that was exhausting but satisfying. Rebecca got better at anticipating Yates's needs, at managing his schedule with minimal chaos, at knowing when he needed information and when he needed space. They developed a rapport that was professional but not cold. He asked about her weekend sometimes, made dry comments that were almost jokes, occasionally brought her coffee when he got some for himself. She tried very hard not to develop a crush on her boss. It was a losing battle. The problem was that Yates Montgomery was not just attractive, though he was certainly that. He was smart, genuinely smart, in a way that made conversations with him feel like a challenge in the best possible way. He was passionate about his work, about making his hotels not just profitable but genuinely excellent. He treated his employees with respect, remembered details about their lives, and held himself to the same high standards he applied to everyone else. Rebecca told herself it did not matter. He was her boss. He probably barely thought of her outside of work context. This was a professional relationship, nothing more, and she needed to keep it that way if she wanted to keep her job. But then there was the incident with the wedding. It was a Saturday in October, and Rebecca was not supposed to be working, but a crisis had emerged with one of the hotels in Boston. Yates had called her in the morning, apologetic but urgent, asking if she could help sort out some details. She had agreed without hesitation, because that was the kind of employee she was trying to be, and also because she had no weekend plans beyond laundry and Netflix. They spent 2 hours on phone calls and emails, coordinating with the Boston team to resolve the issue. When it was finally handled, Yates leaned back in his desk chair and rubbed his eyes. They were in his home office, which was somehow even more impressive than his office at headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and everything was decorated in shades of navy and cream that suggested an interior designer had been involved. "I am sorry for ruining your Saturday," he said. "You did not ruin it. I did not have plans." He raised an eyebrow. "Nothing. It is the weekend. I am still new to the city. I have not exactly built up a robust social calendar yet." That was only partially true. She had been in the city for 2 years, but most of her college friends had moved away for jobs, and making new friends as an adult was approximately as easy as solving a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. "What about family?" "They are in Oregon. We talk on the phone, but visiting is expensive." She did not mention that she still had not managed to save enough for a plane ticket, or that her mother worried constantly about her living alone in such an expensive city. Yates was quiet for a moment, studying her with that assessing gaze he sometimes used. "There is a wedding this evening. My cousin's daughter. I am obligated to attend, and I am supposed to bring a +1. My date canceled this morning." Rebecca was not sure why he was telling her this. "That's unfortunate. Would you like to go?" She blinked. "To a wedding, with you, as a colleague," he clarified quickly. "Not as anything weird. I just hate going to these things alone, and you helped me out today. Consider it a thank you." This was a terrible idea. She knew it was a terrible idea immediately. Going to a wedding with her boss, even as colleagues, was blurring lines that should remain very clearly defined. But he was looking at her with something that might have been hope, and she had never been particularly good at saying no when people looked at her like that. What time? The wedding was at a venue that Rebecca could not have afforded to sneeze in, let alone attend. Yates had arranged for a dress to be delivered to her apartment, which was either extremely thoughtful or wildly inappropriate. She could not decide which. The dress was gorgeous, a deep emerald that somehow looked perfect on her, and she tried not to think about how he had known her size. He picked her up at 6, driving himself in a black car that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. He wore a tuxedo like he had been born in one, and Rebecca felt simultaneously underdressed and overdressed, a paradox that did not make sense but felt accurate anyway. "You look nice," he said as she got in the car. "Thank you. So do you." That was an understatement of criminal proportions, but she was trying to maintain professionalism. The wedding was beautiful in the way that weddings with unlimited budgets tended to be. Everything was white flowers and string lights and elegance that looked effortless, but definitely was not. Yates introduced her to relatives and family friends, describing her as his assistant in a tone that made it sound important rather than subordinate. She shook hands and made small talk, and tried not to feel overwhelmed by the sheer wealth on display. During dinner, she sat next to him at a table full of people she did not know. The conversation flowed around her, stories about people and events she had no context for, but Yates kept her included, explaining references and asking her opinions. His hand rested on the back of her chair, not touching her but close enough that she was aware of it constantly. "How are you holding up?" he asked during a lull in conversation. "Fine. Everyone has been nice. My family can be a lot. If you need to escape, just say the word." She smiled. "I am okay. This is actually kind of fun." Fun is not a word I usually associate with family weddings, but I will take your word for it. When the dancing started, she assumed they would stay at the table, but Yates stood and offered his hand. "One dance. Then we can leave if you want." Rebecca hesitated for only a moment before taking his hand. The dance floor was crowded with couples swaying to a song she did not recognize, slow and romantic in a way that made her very aware that this was a bad idea. Yates's hand settled on her waist, warm even through the fabric of her dress, and she rested her hand on his shoulder, trying to maintain some appropriate distance. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said quietly. "I know this was probably not how you wanted to spend your Saturday. It is okay." Really? She meant it. Being here with him, even in this strange professional but not quite capacity, was better than being alone in her apartment. They swayed together, and the song changed, and Rebecca let herself have this moment even though she knew it could not mean anything. Tomorrow they would go back to being boss and assistant, back to clear boundaries and professional distance. But tonight, just for tonight, she could pretend. When the song ended, they did not immediately pull apart. Yates was looking at her with an expression she could not quite read, something intense and complicated. "Rebecca," he started, and then someone called his name, an older woman in a silver dress who turned out to be his aunt. The moment broke. He stepped back, his professional mask sliding back into place, and went to greet his aunt. They left an hour later. The drive back to her apartment was quiet but not uncomfortable. When he pulled up to her building, he turned to her with a small smile. "Thank you again. You made tonight significantly more bearable. I had a good time." It was not a lie. She got out of the car and went inside and spent the rest of the night staring at her ceiling and telling herself that the way he had looked at her on the dance floor did not mean anything at all. Monday morning arrived with a return to normalcy that was both disappointing and relieving. Yates was all business, focused on meetings and decisions, and the million things that required his attention. Rebecca managed his schedule, answered his calls, and pretended that everything was exactly the same as it had been before the wedding. But it was not exactly the same, and she knew it. She caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she was not looking. His hand would linger when he handed her papers. He asked her opinion more often, on things that had nothing to do with scheduling, and actually seemed to care about her answers. Or maybe she was imagining all of it, projecting her own feelings onto completely innocent interactions. In November, he asked her to accompany him on a business trip to San Francisco. One of the hotels was undergoing renovations, and he wanted to oversee the progress personally. Patricia usually went with him on trips, but she had a family emergency and could not travel. "It would just be 2 days," Yates explained. "Separate hotel rooms, obviously. I would need you there primarily for meetings and coordination." Rebecca agreed because it was her job, and also because turning down an all-expenses-paid trip to San Francisco would have been absurd. The flight was smooth, and the hotel was predictably gorgeous, all modern design and stunning views. Her room was on the same floor as Yates's, just a few doors down. They spent the first day in back-to-back meetings with contractors and designers, going over timelines and budgets and material choices. Rebecca took notes and made herself useful, and tried not to be distracted by how competent Yates was when he was in his element. That evening, he knocked on her hotel room door and asked if she wanted to grab dinner. "There is a place nearby that supposedly has the best Italian food on the West Coast. I figured we should investigate that claim." The restaurant was small and intimate, the kind of place that took reservations months in advance, unless you were someone like Yates Montgomery. They sat at a corner table, and for the first time since she had started working for him, the conversation was not about work. He asked about her family, her childhood in Oregon, what had brought her to the East Coast. She told him about growing up in a small town, about parents who loved her but did not quite understand her desire for something bigger, about choosing a college across the country because she wanted to prove she could. "You regret it?" he asked. "No. It was lonely sometimes, and it did not turn out exactly how I planned, but I do not regret it. What about you? Did you always know you would run the company?" His expression shifted, something complicated crossing his features. "My father always assumed I would. I was not sure if I wanted to for a long time. What changed? He got sick. Cancer. He had always been this larger-than-life figure, impossible to live up to, and suddenly he was just a person, mortal, scared." Yates looked down at his wine glass, turning it slowly. "He asked me to take over, and I could not say no. I thought maybe I would do it for a few years, fulfill my obligation, and then hand it off to someone else. But you did not." "No, I fell in love with it. Not the money or the status, but the work itself. Building something, making it better, creating spaces that mean something to people." He looked up at her, and his eyes were earnest in a way she rarely saw. "Does that make sense?" "Yes, completely." They talked for hours, until the restaurant was getting ready to close, and the waiter had refilled their wine glasses more times than Rebecca could count. She learned that Yates played piano, that he hated seafood, that he had a younger sister who lived in Paris and called him every Sunday. He learned that Rebecca had once wanted to be a writer, that she was afraid of birds for no reason she could articulate, that she missed the rain in Oregon more than she expected. When they finally left, walking back to the hotel through streets that sparkled with city lights, everything felt different. The professional distance that Rebecca had been clinging to had eroded somewhere between the appetizers and dessert, and she did not know how to get it back. Did not know if she wanted to. At her hotel room door, Yates stopped and looked at her with that same intense expression from the wedding. "I probably should not say this." Her heart was beating too fast. "Say what?" "That I have really enjoyed tonight. More than I have enjoyed anything in a long time." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "You are easy to talk to, Rebecca. You make me forget about work for a while, and that is rare." "I enjoyed it too," she said quietly. They stood there in the hallway, the moment stretching between them, heavy with possibility. Then Yates took a small step back, breaking whatever spell had been weaving around them. "Good night, Rebecca." "Good night." She went into her room and leaned against the closed door, her mind racing. This was dangerous. This feeling, this connection, it was going to complicate everything. She should probably start looking for another job, something that would create necessary distance before this situation spiraled into something she could not control. But she did not want distance. That was the problem. She wanted more nights like tonight, more conversations that lasted for hours, more of Yates looking at her like she mattered in ways that had nothing to do with scheduling and correspondence. The next morning, they flew back to the city, and the professional walls went back up. Yates was focused on his phone during the flight, handling some issue with one of the hotels in Miami. Rebecca answered emails and tried not to think about the dinner, the conversation, the way he had looked at her in the hallway. December arrived with holiday madness. The hotels were fully booked, corporate parties needed to be coordinated, and Yates's schedule became even more demanding than usual. Rebecca worked long hours and survived on coffee and determination. They barely had time for personal conversations, which was probably for the best. The company holiday party was scheduled for the third Friday of December, A catered event at the headquarters with an open bar and mandatory attendance. Rebecca wore a black dress she had owned since college and spent the evening making small talk with coworkers she barely knew. Yates gave a speech thanking everyone for their hard work, looking effortlessly charismatic in a dark suit that probably cost more than her rent. She was standing by the window with a glass of wine when he found her an hour into the party. "Hiding?" he asked. "Observing?" "Same thing." He stood next to her, looking out at the city lights. "These parties are exhausting. You looked like you were having fun during your speech. That is called acting. I am good at it when required." He glanced at her, and there was something softer in his expression now, away from the crowd. "How is your family? Are you going to visit them for the holidays?" Rebecca shook her head. "I could not get the time off." That was not entirely true. She could have requested time off, but the plane tickets were expensive and she was still trying to rebuild her savings. "You should have told me. I would have made it work." "It is okay. We are going to video call on Christmas." Yates was quiet for a moment, and she could feel him looking at her even though she kept her eyes on the window. "What are you doing for Christmas Day?" "Nothing planned. Probably just a quiet day at home." "Would you want to have dinner with me?" She turned to look at him then, surprised. "What, Christmas dinner?" "My family does this whole thing every year, very traditional, very chaotic. My sister is visiting from Paris. I would like you to be there." He paused and then added, "As my guest." "Not as my assistant." This was crossing a line. They both knew it. Rebecca could see the awareness in his eyes, the understanding that he was asking for something that went beyond their professional relationship. She should say no. Every rational part of her brain was screaming that she should politely decline, maintain boundaries, protect herself from the inevitable complications. "I would like that," she said instead. Something lit up in his expression, relief and happiness, and something else she did not dare name. "Good. I will pick you up at noon." The rest of the party passed in a blur. Rebecca left early, claiming exhaustion that was not entirely feigned, and spent the next week in a state of anticipation that she could not quite suppress. She bought a new dress for Christmas, green and elegant and slightly beyond her budget. She got her hair trimmed. She told herself repeatedly that this was just a friendly dinner, that it did not mean anything, that she was reading too much into the invitation. She did not believe herself at all. Christmas morning arrived with snow, fat flakes falling past her window in a way that felt almost cinematic. Rebecca got ready with more care than she had applied to anything in recent memory, and when Yates knocked on her door at exactly noon, she felt as ready as she was going to be. He looked different in jeans and a sweater, more casual than she had ever seen him, and somehow even more attractive for it. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her. "You look beautiful." "Thank you. You look nice too." The drive to his family's house took 45 minutes, out of the city and into the kind of neighborhood where every house looked like it belonged in a magazine. His parents' home was enormous, all stone and windows and carefully manicured landscaping dusted with snow. "Before we go in, I should warn you that my family is going to ask a lot of questions," Yates said, pulling into the circular driveway. "They are going to assume things about us." "What kind of things?" "That we are together. Dating." "I told them you are my assistant, but my mother has selective hearing when it suits her." Rebecca's stomach flipped. "Do you want me to correct them if they assume?" He turned to look at her, and his expression was serious. "Do you want to correct them?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications that made her heart race. This was it, the moment where they either acknowledged what had been building between them or pretended it did not exist. "I do not know," she said honestly. Yates reached over and took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "Rebecca, I have been trying very hard to keep things professional between us. You work for me, and I do not want to put you in an uncomfortable position. But I also cannot stop thinking about you. About that night in San Francisco, about the wedding, about every conversation we have had. And if I am completely misreading this situation, please tell me now so I can apologize and we can go back to normal. You are not misreading it. The words came out quiet but firm. I have been thinking about you too, probably more than I should. His hand tightened around hers. So what do we do? I do not know. This is complicated. It is. He was still holding her hand, still looking at her like she was something precious. But maybe it does not have to be. Maybe we just see where this goes. What about work? The power dynamic is weird, Yates. You are my boss. Then maybe you stop being my assistant. We find you a different position in the company, something that reports to someone else. Or you work somewhere else entirely, and I help you find something good. He said it like it was simple, like he had already thought through all the logistics. I do not want you to feel trapped or pressured, but I also do not want to pretend I do not have feelings for you anymore. Rebecca's breath caught. Feelings. He had feelings for her. This was real, not just her imagination or wishful thinking. I have feelings for you too, she admitted. I have been trying not to, but I do. Yates smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. So we are doing this. I think we are. He leaned across the console and kissed her, soft and careful, like he was afraid she might disappear. Rebecca kissed him back, and the world narrowed to just this moment, this person, this feeling that was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. When they pulled apart, she was smiling so hard her face hurt. Your family is going to know something happened. Good. Let them. The dinner was exactly as chaotic as Yates had promised. His mother was a force of nature who hugged Rebecca like they were old friends and immediately started asking intrusive questions. His father was quieter but warm, with the same assessing gaze that Yates had inherited. His sister Elise was sharp and funny, and made it very clear that she was going to interrogate Rebecca thoroughly at some point. They ate too much food and drank too much wine, and Rebecca felt herself relaxing into the warmth of this big, loud family. Yates's hand found hers under the table, their fingers intertwining like it was the most natural thing in the world. After dinner, Elise cornered Rebecca in the kitchen while they were clearing plates. So you are dating my brother. It was not a question. Rebecca decided honesty was probably the best policy. As of about 2 hours ago, yes, Elise grinned. Good. He has been moping around for weeks, completely obvious to everyone except apparently himself. You are good for him. You do not even know me. I know he brought you to Christmas dinner. He has never brought anyone to Christmas dinner. That tells me everything I need to know. Later, when they were driving back to the city, Rebecca felt like she was floating. The evening had been perfect in ways she had not expected, and sitting next to Yates with his hand resting on her knee felt right in a way that made all the complications seem manageable. That was not so bad, right? He asked. Your family is wonderful. Your mother is terrifying but wonderful. He laughed. She likes you. She told me while you were in the kitchen with Elise. What did she say exactly? That you are smart and kind, and if I mess this up she will disown me. Rebecca smiled. Solid threat. She does not make idle threats, so I will take it seriously. He glanced at her, his expression softening. Thank you for coming today, for taking a chance on this, on us. Thank you for asking. They spent the rest of the holiday week together as much as they could, navigating this new dynamic that was strange and exciting. They agreed that Rebecca would transition to a different role in the company after the new year, something that would remove the direct, reporting relationship. Yates helped her look at positions, and they found an opening in the marketing department that actually aligned with her degree better than executive assistant had. The transition was not seamless. Patricia was surprised but supportive, and Rebecca's new boss was a woman named Jennifer who seemed competent and friendly. Learning a new role while also navigating a new relationship was overwhelming at times, but Yates was patient and Rebecca was adaptable, and somehow they made it work. Their first official date outside of family dinners and work contexts was in January, at a small French restaurant that Elise had recommended. Yates wore a suit because he always wore suits, and Rebecca wore a blue dress that made her feel confident. They talked about everything and nothing, and when he walked her to her apartment afterward, he kissed her goodnight like he had all the time in the world. "I could get used to this," Rebecca said, her arms around his neck. "Good, because I am not planning on stopping." By February, she had officially moved into the marketing department and was no longer Yates's assistant in any capacity. It was freeing in ways she had not expected. She could have lunch with him without worrying about professional boundaries. She could text him things that had nothing to do with his schedule. She could kiss him in the elevator without fear of HR violations. They kept the relationship relatively quiet at work, not hiding exactly but not advertising either. Some people figured it out anyway, whispers that traveled through the office, but no one seemed particularly scandalized. Yates was well liked despite his demanding standards, and Rebecca had earned respect through her competence and work ethic. In March, she met his extended family at his cousin's birthday party. In April, she introduced him to her parents via video call, and her mother cried happy tears that made Rebecca cry too. In May, he took her to Paris to visit Elise, and they spent a week eating pastries and wandering through museums, and falling more in love with every day. She moved in with him in June. His apartment was enormous compared to hers, all space and light and views that never got old. He cleared out closets and made room for her things, and acted like it was the easiest decision he had ever made. "Are you sure about this?" Rebecca asked while unpacking boxes in what was now their bedroom. "This is a big step." Yates wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I am sure, are you?" "Yes, definitely yes." They fell into routines that felt domestic and comfortable, morning coffee together before work, cooking dinner in the enormous kitchen, which Rebecca was slowly learning to navigate, falling asleep tangled together, his arm around her waist like he was afraid she might disappear in the night. In August, they went to Oregon so Yates could meet her family in person. Her parents loved him immediately, which was both gratifying and slightly embarrassing. Her father took him fishing, and her mother showed him every embarrassing childhood photo she had saved. Rebecca watched Yates charm her entire family and felt a wave of affection so strong it almost knocked her over. "They love you," she said that night, lying in the guest room bed that was too small for both of them. "Your mother told me that if I hurt you, she will drive across the country to hurt me back. That sounds like her. I told her she would never need to." He brushed hair away from her face, his touch gentle. "I love you, Rebecca. I know we have not said it yet, but I do. I love you." She had known for a while, felt it in the way he looked at her and held her and made space for her in his life. But hearing the words still made her heart stutter. "I love you too." They got engaged in November, almost exactly a year after that business trip to San Francisco. Yates proposed on the beach in Oregon, during another visit to see her family, with a ring that was beautiful and tasteful and probably cost more than her car. Rebecca said yes before he even finished asking the question, and they called both sets of parents immediately after, giddy and breathless. The wedding was planned for the following September, enough time to organize something that would satisfy both families without being ostentatious. Rebecca threw herself into planning with the same determination she applied to everything, and Yates helped when she wanted input and stayed out of the way when she did not. They got married on a Saturday afternoon, surrounded by family and friends and flowers that Rebecca's mother had insisted on despite Rebecca's protests that they were too expensive. She wore a white dress that made her feel like a princess, and Yates wore a tuxedo that made him look like he had walked out of a magazine. When he saw her walking down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears that he did not bother to hide, and Rebecca felt her own eyes burning in response. This was real. This beautiful, impossible thing was actually real. The vows were traditional but heartfelt, promises to love and cherish and support each other through whatever life brought. When the officiant pronounced them married, Yates kissed her like they were the only two people in the room, and the crowd erupted in applause. The reception was a blur of champagne and dancing and joy. Rebecca's feet hurt from her heels and her face hurt from smiling, but she did not want the night to end. During their first dance, Yates pulled her close and whispered, "I cannot believe I get to keep you. You are stuck with me now, no returns. Best deal I ever made." They honeymooned in Italy for 2 weeks, eating pasta and drinking wine and exploring cities that were older than anything Rebecca had ever seen. They talked about the future, about kids and houses, and all the things they wanted to build together. It felt surreal sometimes, that this was her life now, but also inevitable, like everything had been leading to this person and this moment. When they got back, real life resumed with work and routines and the comfortable rhythm of being married. Rebecca thrived in the marketing department, eventually getting promoted to a senior position that came with more responsibility and better pay. Yates continued to run the company with the same passion and excellence that had made her fall for him in the first place. They bought a house in Connecticut the following year, something with space for the family they were starting to talk about seriously. It needed work, but that was part of the appeal, the idea of building something together from the ground up. Rebecca got pregnant in the spring, an ordinary Tuesday morning when the test showed 2 lines and her hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. She told Yates that evening over dinner, watching his face transform from confusion to shock to pure, unbridled joy. "We are having a baby. We are having a baby." He picked her up and spun her around despite her protests, laughing in a way that was completely uninhibited. They called their families and celebrated and started planning for this new chapter that was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. The pregnancy was relatively easy, all things considered. Rebecca had morning sickness for the first trimester and swollen ankles in the third, but nothing catastrophic. Yates was attentive to the point of being overbearing, constantly asking if she needed anything and reading pregnancy books like he was studying for a final exam. Their daughter was born in January, during a snowstorm that made getting to the hospital an adventure. She came out screaming and perfect, with dark hair and Yates's eyes, and Rebecca fell in love all over again. They named her Caroline Marie Montgomery, and she became the center of their world in the way babies always do. Sleepless nights and endless diapers and the overwhelming responsibility of keeping a tiny human alive. But also moments of pure magic, watching Yates hold their daughter like she was made of glass, seeing her smile for the first time, feeling her tiny hand wrap around Rebecca's finger. Life became a balancing act of work and family, demanding but fulfilling. Rebecca went back to work part-time after maternity leave, and they hired a nanny who Caroline adored. Yates adjusted his schedule to be home more, delegating responsibilities he had once insisted on handling himself. Caroline's first birthday party was in January, a small gathering of family and close friends. Rebecca watched Yates help their daughter blow out her candle and felt a swell of gratitude so strong it brought tears to her eyes. This life they had built, this family, it was everything she had never known she wanted. "What are you thinking about?" Yates asked later, after everyone had gone home and Caroline was asleep upstairs. "Just how different my life is now compared to 2 years ago. When I showed up for that interview, terrified and completely underqualified." He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I knew you were special the first time I met you, the way you knocked over your water bottle and then tried to pretend it did not happen. I was so nervous." "I know. It was endearing." He kissed her forehead, soft and sweet. "Best hire I ever made. I am not working for you anymore. Best decision I ever made to pursue you romantically then." Rebecca laughed and leaned into him, feeling safe and loved and exactly where she belonged. She thought about that rejection email that had arrived on a Wednesday morning, the one that had led her to apply for a job she was not qualified for. She thought about making mistakes and learning quickly and slowly falling for the man who was now her husband. "You know, I was never playing hard to get," she said softly. Yates pulled back to look at her, confused. "What?" "When we first started working together, I was not playing hard to get or trying to be mysterious. I was just trying to do my job and not embarrass myself." He smiled, the kind of smile that still made her heart skip. "I know. That was part of what made you so compelling. You were just yourself, honest and genuine. You did not pretend to be anything you were not. I did not realize you were noticing me like that back then. I was trying very hard not to notice you like that, but you made it impossible." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. "You were worth noticing, Rebecca, worth pursuing, worth everything." She kissed him then, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude and happiness into it. This man who had taken a chance on her when no one else would. This man who had seen potential in her that she had not even seen in herself. This man who had become her partner, her best friend, her family. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too. Always." Upstairs, Caroline made a soft sound in her sleep, and they both smiled. Their daughter, their home, their life together. It was not perfect. Nothing ever was, but it was theirs. Built on honesty and hard work and a love that had started in an office and grown into something that would last forever. Rebecca thought about that first day, standing in her office with shaking hands and a desperate need to prove herself. She had proven herself, but more importantly, she had found something she had not been looking for. She had found home in a person, in a life, in a future that was brighter than anything she had imagined. And as Yates took her hand and led her upstairs to check on their sleeping daughter, Rebecca knew with absolute certainty that every rejection, every struggle, every moment of doubt had been worth it. Because they had all led her here, to this man, to this family, to this love that filled every corner of her heart. She was not playing hard to get, but being worth getting had turned out to be the most important thing of all.